Inspired by the judgment in Muhammad Faisal v. The state while remaining faithful to the Lahore High Court judgment. The language will be simple, powerful, and suitable for a professional. Every day, millions of people leave home with one simple hope: to work hard, earn an honest living, and return safely to their families. Most of us never imagine that an ordinary morning could become the last day of someone's life. But on a September morning in Pakistan's historic city of Jhelum, a disagreement lasting only a few minutes ended in a tragedy that shocked an entire community. The case eventually reached the Lahore High Court, Rawalpindi bench. There, a division bench was asked to answer an important question. Can a person who unleashes extreme violence over a minor workplace dispute later ask the court for mercy? The answer would become an important lesson in criminal law, not only for Pakistan, but for every society that believes justice begins with respect for human life. This is the story of Muhammad Faisal versus the state. The official court record. Before we begin, here are the official details of the case. This judgment was delivered by the Lahore High Court, Rawalpindi bench. The case arose from FIR number 173 of 2019, registered at Police Station Saddar, District Jhelum. It came before a division bench consisting of the Honorable Mr. Justice Sadakat Ali Khan and the Honorable Mr. Justice C.H. Abdul Aziz. The judgment was announced on September 14, 2022. Today, we are not here to sensationalize this tragedy. We are here to understand why the court reached its decision, and what legal principles every citizen should know. An ordinary morning. It was shortly after 8 o'clock in the morning. The local vegetable and poultry market had already come alive. Shopkeepers were arranging their merchandise. Workers unloaded fresh supplies. Customers bargained over prices. The sounds of business filled the narrow streets. Among those workers was 17-year-old Shehzad Ashraf. Like countless teenagers from modest families, he was not thinking about luxury. He was thinking about responsibility. He worked to help support his family. Every day's wages mattered. Every hour of work mattered. To many people in the market, Shehzad was simply another hard-working young employee trying to build a better future. No one could have imagined that this ordinary morning would end in unimaginable loss. A few minutes late. According to the prosecution's evidence accepted by the courts, Shehzad arrived at work later than expected. Not hours late. Not days absent. Just late enough for an argument to begin. In most workplaces around the world, such situations are handled with a warning, a discussion, perhaps a deduction from wages. Sometimes an employee is dismissed. Life moves on. But according to the evidence presented before the court, that was not what happened here. Instead, the disagreement escalated within moments. What should have remained an ordinary workplace dispute suddenly turned into a violent confrontation. Witnesses later described a horrifying scene unfolding in broad daylight. Customers, workers, passers-by, people who had come only to buy food for their families, found themselves watching something they never expected to witness. The attack. The prosecution alleged that the employer armed himself with a heavy meat-cutting tool commonly used in butcher shops. Within seconds, the young employee found himself under attack. The assault was swift, violent, and relentless. According to the medical evidence later examined by the courts, multiple severe injuries were inflicted, particularly to the victim's head. The injuries were catastrophic. People nearby rushed forward. Some shouted for help. Others tried to stop the violence. Several immediately arranged transportation to the hospital. Doctors did everything they could. Despite their efforts, the young worker could not be saved. Later that day, he was pronounced dead. One family lost its son. Another family faced criminal prosecution. And a workplace disagreement had become a murder investigation. A community demands answers. News of the incident spread rapidly throughout Jhelum. Questions echoed across the community. How could a disagreement over reporting late to work end in the loss of a young life? Could such violence ever be justified? Or had the law been challenged in the most direct way possible? Police investigators arrived. The crime scene was secured. Physical evidence was collected. Witnesses were interviewed. Medical experts documented every injury with precision. Every statement, every photograph, every report would later become part of the evidence presented before the courts. At this stage, no one could predict what the final judicial outcome would be. But one thing had become painfully clear. This case was no longer about a workplace dispute. It had become a test of how the justice system responds when human life is lost through extreme violence. Transition to Part 2. As investigators continued gathering evidence, the prosecution believed it had assembled a strong case. But in every criminal trial, evidence must do more than raise suspicion. It must withstand careful judicial scrutiny. In Part 2, we will examine the police investigation, the medical evidence, the eyewitness testimony, and the trial court proceedings that ultimately resulted in the most severe punishment known to Pakistani law. To be continued. The investigation begins. Whenever a life is lost under suspicious circumstances, investigators face a single responsibility: to separate emotion from evidence. Within hours of the incident, police officers reached the marketplace. The area was secured. The suspected weapon was taken into custody. Bloodstains, photographs, and physical evidence were carefully documented. Every step of the investigation would later be examined inside a courtroom. Because in criminal law, facts matter more than assumptions. The silent witness. Unlike human memory, physical evidence does not change its story. Medical experts conducted a post-mortem examination. Their findings painted a disturbing picture. The victim had suffered multiple severe injuries, particularly to the head. The doctors concluded that these injuries were sufficient, in the ordinary course of nature, to cause death. The medical evidence also matched the prosecution's version of events. In criminal trials, this is extremely important. Eyewitnesses may disagree. Memories may fade. But when medical findings support eyewitness testimony, the prosecution's case often becomes much stronger. Ordinary people become extraordinary witnesses. The incident occurred in a busy marketplace. People were buying vegetables. Others were unloading deliveries. Some had just opened their shops. They had no reason to expect that they would soon become witnesses in a murder investigation. These individuals later appeared before the court. They were not professional witnesses. They were ordinary citizens who happened to be present. The courts often refer to such individuals as natural witnesses. Why? Because they were exactly where one would reasonably expect them to be. They had no apparent reason to falsely accuse anyone. Their presence at the scene was natural. Their accounts remained consistent. And most importantly, their testimony corresponded with the medical evidence. This became one of the strongest pillars of the prosecution's case. The defense. Like every accused person under the law, Mohammed Faisal was entitled to a fair trial. This principle is not unique to Pakistan. Whether a case is heard in Pakistan, the United States, the United Kingdom, India, Canada, or Australia, a criminal conviction must rest upon reliable evidence presented before an independent court. The burden always remains on the prosecution. The accused is presumed innocent unless guilt is established according to law. This principle protects every citizen. It protects the innocent, and it strengthens public confidence in the justice system. During the trial, the defense challenged the prosecution's case. As every defense lawyer is expected to do, the court carefully considered those arguments. It examined the witnesses. It reviewed the medical reports. It analyzed the physical evidence. Every important question was tested, not because the court doubted justice, but because justice demands careful examination before reaching a final conclusion. The trial court's findings. After hearing all the evidence, the trial court reached its conclusion. The prosecution had successfully established its case beyond reasonable doubt. The eyewitnesses were found to be reliable. The medical evidence supported their testimony. The physical evidence reinforced the prosecution's version of events. The court found no significant contradiction capable of creating reasonable doubt. In criminal law, reasonable doubt is not imaginary doubt. It must arise from the evidence itself. The trial court concluded that no such doubt existed. Accordingly, Muhammad Faisal was convicted of murder. The court awarded the sentence prescribed under the law. But the legal battle was not over. Under Pakistani law, every death sentence must receive confirmation from the High Court before it can become effective. At the same time, every convicted person has the right to challenge the conviction before the appellate court. That is exactly what happened next. The case moved from the trial court to the Lahore High Court, Rawalpindi bench. There, a division bench would carefully re-examine every important aspect of the case. Not to conduct a new trial, but to determine whether the trial court had correctly applied the law and properly appreciated the evidence. Sometimes convictions are overturned. Sometimes sentences are reduced. Sometimes entirely new legal principles emerge. The question now before the High Court was simple. Had the trial court reached the correct conclusion? Or had it committed an error requiring appellate intervention? Part 3. The final battle in the Lahore High Court. The case did not end with the trial court. Like every person convicted by a court of law, Muhammad Faisal had the legal right to appeal. His lawyers took the case to the Lahore High Court, Rawalpindi bench. Now, two senior judges carefully began reviewing everything once again. They examined the evidence. They studied the medical reports. They listened to the arguments made by both sides. The defense made one important request. They did not deny that the incident had taken place. Instead, they argued that Muhammad Faisal had acted in sudden anger. According to the defense, the victim had arrived late for work. They claimed that the accused lost control of his emotions for a few moments. Because of that, they asked the High Court to reduce the death sentence to life imprisonment. At first glance, some people may think that argument sounds reasonable. After all, people do lose their temper. People do make mistakes. But the judges had to answer a much bigger question. Can a few moments of anger excuse extreme violence? The court carefully examined the facts. It noted that the victim was only 17 years old. He was unarmed. He posed no serious threat. The medical evidence showed that he had suffered several powerful blows, mainly to the head. For the judges, this was extremely important. They explained that the law recognizes something called human frailty. Human frailty means a person may sometimes lose self-control because of an unexpected and overwhelming situation. But the court also explained that there is a limit. When violence becomes excessive, when repeated deadly blows are delivered with a dangerous weapon, the law cannot simply call it a moment of anger. The judges found that the brutality of the attack went far beyond ordinary human weakness. The court also observed something else. The reason behind the attack was incredibly small. The disagreement was about arriving late for work. The judges explained that if such a minor disagreement were accepted as a legal excuse for reducing punishment, it would send the wrong message to society. The law cannot encourage people to answer small disputes with deadly violence. Justice must protect human life, not weaken its value. For these reasons, the division bench found no legal ground to reduce the sentence. The appeal was dismissed. But one final decision still remained. The court now had to decide whether the death sentence awarded by the trial court should also be confirmed. That decision would become the final chapter of this tragic case. Part 4. The final verdict and the lesson for society. After carefully reviewing every piece of evidence, the Lahore High Court announced its judgment. The division bench concluded that the prosecution had successfully proved its case. The eyewitnesses were trustworthy. Their statements matched the medical evidence. No serious contradiction was found. The court also agreed with the trial court that there were no mitigating circumstances. As a result, the criminal appeal was dismissed. The murder reference was answered in the affirmative. The sentence awarded by the trial court was confirmed. For the victim's family, the judgment brought a measure of legal closure. For the accused, it marked the end of the appeal before the High Court. But this case is about much more than one judgment. It reminds employers that anger can never become a substitute for discipline. It reminds workers that every human life has equal value before the law. And it reminds all of us that justice is built on evidence, fairness, and respect for human dignity. Whether a case is heard in Pakistan, the United States, India, the United Kingdom, or any nation governed by the rule of law, one principle remains the same. No one has the right to take another person's life over a minor disagreement. Every accused person deserves a fair trial. Every victim deserves justice. And every court has a duty to decide cases only on the evidence placed before it. That is what makes the rule of law stronger than anger, stronger than revenge, and stronger than fear. This judgment is a reminder that the law does not punish people for losing an argument. It punishes unlawful acts that destroy innocent lives. Justice may sometimes take years, but when courts carefully examine the evidence and faithfully apply the law, they strengthen public confidence in the justice system. If you found this legal story informative, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel. We bring real court judgments, explained in simple language, so that everyone, not just lawyers, can understand how justice works. Thank you for watching.